Aloha, this is Rosa McAllister, and welcome back to On Being a Service Warrior, interviews with the firewalkers among us. Those who have had their struggles and yet have chosen to come out the other side into lives of service for others. Click subscribe and tap the notification bell to keep up with future episodes of this ongoing series. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to catch up with other episodes in this series, as well as other offerings in Network's YouTube channel. Mahalo, thank you, and always remember you are the light. Be the light.
Hello again. And now, drum roll, please. What I am certain will be a very wonderful and juicy conversation with my beautiful friend, Rowena Pantaleon Duncan. I met Rowena, I think maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I'm not sure.
2015.
Oh my gosh, so that's 5 years ago. Good guess.
Mm-hmm.
I was assisting my friend Laura Forsyth at her One Yoga Global retreat that was taking place at Lake Shasta, California.
Rowena that may have been 2014.
Oh, so 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Rowena and her husband Ted were our hosts and the managers, caretakers, everything of this most magical location where we were staying. This was a land steeped in history, spiritual energy, and so incredibly very blessed. And Rowena and Ted took amazing care of us as the best hosts ever, but they also held the space for us with love and care, knowing that what we were trying to do there was just not an ordinary getaway kind of retreat, but one that would be very memorable for all of us forever, and in ways I don't think any of us could have ever imagined at the time. I found in Rowena immediately a long-held sister, a fellow traveler in the world of healing work, and as the years have moved along, our connection and our friendship has deepened even more. And during this time, life has moved along for both of us in almost parallel pathways to today, July 2020, where more transitions are upon us, her especially, chapters closing, new adventures beginning, and more. I have been so looking forward to this time together, helping to introduce my friend Rowena to more of my world and my peeps, and also learning from her more of her incredible, deep, beautiful wisdom, and just being in her presence once again. She just always makes me breathe deeper and more fully and know that all is good in this world. So Rowena, mahalo, my love. Thank you. Mahalo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And we've tried over a couple of months to try to make this happen. And here it's the perfect day, the perfect time for us to be talking. I just know this. And especially with so much going on in the world and so much going on in your life and my life and everything else. And I should just say this is July 2020. It's July 2nd, 2020, particularly. And the world is kind of a funny place, to say the least, right now. We are in the midst of, who knows what it'll be called in the future, but it's the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. For many of us, we've been in various stages of lockdown, reopening, lockdown, wherever we're at, being very mindful and careful of this very deadly virus. There's also a lot of other things that are rising to the surface right now, things that I think need to in various ways. Chaos and controversy and things that have been barely under wraps for far too long, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, around white elitism and some racial inequities and so much more. So I'm just putting that out there, that's kind of a bit of the framework of which we are here together, both of us, me in Maui, Hawaii, and you in California, in your beautiful home. As I always say, and as we already talked about with these interviews, I share always with people the premise of this On Being a Service Warrior series. this idea that we are all firewalkers. I believe that we have walked through some stuff, and we have chosen or been called or whatever to be of service. And I think there are more of us out there than we even know. And so I'm just so thrilled to speak to yet another firewalker and service warrior. We will not be doing in any way any kind of therapy here. I have the same basic 5 questions that I ask everyone, and I've already shared those with you. So the first one is, so who is Rowena? Who is she? And or if it's easier or different, if there were people standing behind you who know you very well, and I'm sure there are, what would they be saying? Don't forget to say this, or this is what she really is, or what have you.
Yeah. It's so difficult to answer that question because I've done so many years of working on disidentifying with the who, who am I? And at the same time, there is this foundation that always arises towards that what I really am, I can't control in terms of what shows up, meaning I have a tendency to be giving. I have a tendency to be very fierce in many ways. And I have a tendency to be very skilled at touch healing. And I'm not always good with flowery words. I'm usually called as someone who's fiery, someone who's direct, someone who tells the truth, and someone who loves the truth, even though it's painful. And so I first, of course, practice that on myself and use the outer world as a mirror to help me see what I am and who I am. So when there's difficulty in my life, especially when there's an internal angst or disturbance, it's, as much as I would love it to be about the other, it always really comes back to me. And fortunately, there's been many, many years of practice to keep coming back and to keep using the outer world as the mirror rather than making it to be about the other. So, who am I? Well, I come from a very rich culture that is deep in the elementals, the earth, the ancestors, the water spirits, the mountain spirits. And my grandfather on my father's side was a farmer and owned a lot of land in the Philippines. And over the years, there were a lot of mandates about not owning that much land, so that there's going to be more of a vertical ownership of land rather than a horizontal ownership of land. And so and then I come also from a long line of, through my mother, of deep, 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 deep relationship to dreaming and to the ancestors and to being able to sense in a very, very deep way. Like my mother can look at a person and in 15 minutes say something and I'm going, oh my God. I'll give you an example. I've been friends with this gentleman for years and years. And actually is friends of Ted and myself. And I introduced Mom to this person. This was back in maybe late 1999 to 2000. And she says within 15 minutes, oh, that guy may be your friend, but watch out for him. And I said, oh, say more. And she goes, I can't say more. You'll find out. And boy, within 3 years, it all showed up. It was amazing. So I don't have that kind of skill. It takes me a little while. And partly because I have a tendency of viewing people not just through my instincts, but through my heart. And sometimes my heart overrides my instincts, whereas mom never overrides her instincts. So what else? Who am I?
How would your mother describe you?
Thank you. I have champagne taste with beer money.
That sounds like something my mama would say.
Yeah,
about me too.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, I won't buy something just because. Like if I had to choose for something, I would pick the most expensive one, only because of quality, how long it will last. And I'd rather not buy it if it's not quality. And I'm the same with people. I'd rather have few friends, but quality, and then I get to spend, like for you and I, we don't speak often with each other. And yet when we come together, it's as though we were never separated. And those are the kinds of connections and friendships that I love. And the other that she would say is, I'm too trusting. So she always guides me to, what is your belly telling you? What are your instincts? And so since her passing, I've been exercising that teaching, you might say.
That's good. So as I've shared with you, others who may have watched other interviews here, I am a lover of hearing people's stories, of hearing their histories, their lineage, how they got to be who they are today. And I first acquired this deep love. Well, I loved as a kid. My favorite book as a kid, I don't know that I've shared this before or told many people. My very favoriteest book as a kid that I used to steal and read with the flashlight under the covers was this little burgundy book, and it was called The Lives of the Saints. And there were 15 saints that were listed. Of course, Saint Rose of Lima was in there. And it was a little history, a biography of them and where they came from and how they got to be who they were, from the beginnings and all of that. So I think that was my first love of learning people's stories and their history. But then it was really forged through the late 1980s, early 1990s, and then forward, helping people with disabilities kind of reclaim their true history of who they were, whether they could tell us or whether people who loved them and knew them, we pieced it together. And we'd sometimes wrap around the entire room on large chart paper, a timeline of their life, the highs, the lows, everything in between. And what I've learned over time is that most of us, when we talk about our lives, we talk about specific situations or events, the time I did this or whatever, the markers on the timeline. And they're fascinating, no doubt about it. But what I learned mostly from people with disabilities is even in the darkest of times, there were other things going on. And what emerged were almost chapters or themes of their life. And so I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share with us some of the themes or chapters of Rowena's life, some of what you wish to share to help us understand who you are today and how you got there, as much as you wish to share about your life, what it has been, and be it the chapters or the timeline or whatever it might be, however you wish to share.
It's a tough question because it's not like I was born and then I was raised. You know, there's just, like you said, there's so many levels and so many intricacies. So coming from a small village and my mom not really being happy in her marriage, because my father was a womanizer. And back then, either the man would live with the woman's family, but mostly the pattern or the way it works is that the woman would go to the man's family. And my mother was not really liked by my father's parents because she came from a family that spoiled her. You know, she had maids. My father didn't. My father was spoiled. She was spoiled too, but he just wasn't accountable, or they didn't hold him accountable for his behavior. And also back then in the Philippines, being married and having affairs was normal. I think in Latin countries, that's also normal. And my mom just could not reconcile with that. And given that she's a very strong-spirited person, she ran away. And back then, running away in the early 60s was just unheard of. So here she is, where my foster grandparents sent money to her so she could run away. And then she had all four of us. There were four of us. And he got wind of this running away. And at the port, he asked who wanted ice cream. And the two younger ones said yes. And my brother and I hung on to her skirt. I wrapped myself around her legs and said, I'm not going with him, I'm going with you. And so that started that separation. We go back to the mainland, which is Luzon, from Visayan Islands. And that was the most difficult, because back then you just don't leave your husband. And it's a big no-no. So we went from family to family to family to family. And mom was just carrying both of us. And usually I tell the story and my whole body is shaking. And so it means that there's a lot more integration that's happened. Although my stomach is kind of roiling a little bit. Only because I can feel how my mom struggled in order to make a better life for herself and for us. And so she was a secretary at Clark Air Force Base to a colonel. And that's how she met my stepdad, who now becomes my father. I mean, he really becomes emotionally my father, and bond with him in a very, very tight and beautiful way. And I remember as a child stroking his golden hair and just staring at this beautiful blue eyes and saying, I want to marry a blonde hair, beautiful blue-eyed blonde hair man, you know. So we come to California, and fast forward, I marry a Spanish Mexican man who wasn't blue-eyed, blonde hair. So, then I don't really follow my mother's footsteps, but in some way, this man wasn't in love with wasn't having an affair with a human being. Instead, his affair was with drugs and cocaine, and I couldn't compete with that. So I leave him, and recognizing, oh, you know, although this time there's no children involved. And because I took care of my siblings at such a young age, I just didn't have any any instinct or any desire to be a mother. I didn't really grow up having a childhood where I could play so easily. I had so many responsibilities as a child, so fast. Babysitting and being a mother to my youngest brother. So fast forward, I kind of jumped there. Fast forward, I was so in love with this man, my first love. And yet I knew that this was not the road for me. And so then I left and started getting very, very interested in shamanism. The doorway to the elementals start opening. And then I started dreaming my second husband, which was Ted. I had no idea where I was going to live. I worked for Pacific Bell, even though I had this psychology training, recognizing through the training that my gift was with touch, and psychology you couldn't touch. Psychotherapy, no touching. And I realized I could help people heal through the mind, but then I discovered the healing was through the body, that the integration between the mind-body had to be in place in order for a more integrated healing, you might say. That psychotherapy is great and it does have its function, but it's not it. And body work is great, but if you don't combine the body-mind, then it's not really an integrated healing either. So while I was working for Pacific Bell, I was fortunate enough to be offered an early retirement, and I wasn't happy. I mean, I was paid well, but I just wasn't happy. It wasn't a soul work. It was more of an earning work. And so I kept saying, okay, what's the next? What could be my soul work? And then these dreams started happening where I was working in this community, and I was meeting this gentleman with beautiful blue eyes and golden hair, and that I was going to be working through the body. And so everything started to come into place. I think part of it, in answer to your question about who am I, is there's this deep relationship to listening inside and following that listening. And then just saying, okay, you want me to be a healer of the body? Show me. Because I studied psychology. Then that's not healing of the body. That's healing of the mind, And then here I am at Pacific Bell being a top level assistant to VP levels and has has nothing to do with psychology, even though my psychology was being used with my job. And so I got this offer of an early retirement, had a 2-year package, it was a phenomenal package, just to leave. And then I said, well, can I get training? And they had part of the offer was to receive training in whatever field I wanted. So I studied body work, paid by Pacific Bell, thank you very much. And then not my time paid, not only did they pay for the tuition, they were paying for me to go to school. And then I graduate, and then I meet Ted, blonde hair, beautiful blue eyes, but really hazel eyes, but mostly blue depending on what he wore. And then sometimes it would be green, and it's just phenomenal. I love those eyes. And then I was invited to visit this community, Chico, and I'm driving down the Esplanade, and it's the Esplanade we're in my dreams, like, oh shit, excuse my language, this is the town of my dream, in my dreams. And so then I started researching what's it like to open a business here. And one of my dreams was to work from home. I didn't want to drive somewhere anymore, because, Bay Area, you drive everywhere. And it all just fell into place. And so then I was able to, for 35 years, help people in this community, plus 10 years in Mount Shasta, helping people there as well, aside from being a manager, and still not dropping my business, being a manager plus part-time with my hands, and really helping people to integrate the body-mind, where helping people to be in their bodies, not just processing the wounds and the trauma through their mental capacity, but bringing it in the body and having those body-mind integration happen. And then, so I loved being a manager at the Springs with Ted, because it gave me an opportunity to still do my work, because Ted was my backup. We did, our jobs were so integral together. And part of the work that I did with Ted was we ended up meeting someone of the Dagara culture who invited us back in the late 1990s to Africa. And Ted and I were the first, you might call, white couple in this village. And even though I'm a brown person, in Africa, I'm still considered white because of the culture. It's the same thing with an African American person going to that village. The African American feels that they're African American, and that village sees them as, yes, you are African American descent, and to us, you're still American. Because to us, to be an African means you are of this land. And they're very clear about that line. And so part of what Ted and I also did for community work was Ted was the gatekeeper for being an earth spirit gatekeeper. And my gatekeeping for this particular village, which I'm still active in, has to do with justice, having to do with truth telling, which is so interesting that in Africa, they saw the soul piece of my soul, which is that I love the truth. And that when people are around me, they love sharing the truth with me, or whatever it is they're hiding. They can't help themselves but tell me about themselves. And sometimes I don't want to hear it, of course, because I'm holding so much information, It's like, oh, not one more. And yet I just send it down to the earth, and I don't need to hold it. So I'm giving you a lot of beef.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it, and learning so much of this I did not know. I knew bits and pieces, so this is beautiful and wonderful, and it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
and so I don't display openly that I am a diviner. There's 3 levels of divining that I've learned, and that's the one is there's a cloth divination, which has all these intricacies and pieces in the cloth. And then there's a stick divination, which also has different pieces to the divination, and the stick moves like crazy. And that is actually the model and the years, hundreds and hundreds of years of practice in this particular village called the Dagara village in West Africa. And that was also handed down and passed on to us. And then the third one is the voice, where there is this literal surrender, you might say is the best word, where there is a surrender of me stepping aside, and then this being comes in and starts to speak. And I haven't done it in many years because it takes a lot of energy, and I end up having to rest, needing a lot of rest, especially since I stopped bleeding. It's the medicine moves through the body in a very, very different way now once you stop bleeding. And also I was taking care of Ted when he was ill, and then I took care of my parents, and then I helped, of course, all three of them cross over to the spirit realm. And then now that with my mom just passing this March of this year, now I'm more active in the divination, and my dreams are starting to come in more. And it's beautiful because the spirit that are actively following me and are in helping and divining are more active now. Oh, and not because I've never been active with them, but more because I'm more available in terms of being of service, you might say. So that service is not something that I say, oh, by the way, I'm a diviner. If you'd like, you can come. It's more word of mouth, or somebody says my name, by the way, this person is a diviner. You should, call this person. And when Ted and I were really, really active back in 1999, 2001, all the way to 2007, because that's when we started working for the Springs, there were people coming from Germany, England, Europe, and we had invitations to divine in Europe, and those were fun work, but also really very difficult work, because there is this surrender for another being to come through you, or to come through the stick, or to come through where the being is using my voice, using my eyes, and using my hands. And the surrender is really, really difficult. And so there's a initiation that happens in Africa, and I was merged in Africa. Ted was merged in Africa. And at the same time, both Ted and I were very clear. Yes, we're married to these beings. And yes, I'm married to Ted, and Ted's married to me. And yes, we will tend this gate. And yes, we will not give up our marriage, because in Africa, sometimes the diviner gets so wrapped up in divinations and service and medicine that the relationship becomes secondary. And Ted and I weren't willing to give up our relationship, where I'm not tending Ted or Ted's not tending me. We saw so much of that in Africa that we didn't want that to happen to ourselves. So then, because, like I said, because I was tending these illnesses and these elders, there's a way in which I tended the divining piece of my life, but more silent. I wasn't divining for others. I was only divining for myself, and I was only divining for my family. And then once in a while, somebody will say, could you please check this for me? But I didn't go into full divination. That's just way too much work. But right now I'm ready. I'm ready to move to my next space. I retired fully because of COVID. I know COVID is very, very difficult for all of us. I'm thankful that my mother chose to cross right before the actual COVID really started. I mean, she crossed over when everything said social distancing, stage 1 social distancing. So what was difficult for her passing and her funeral was we couldn't really invite friends because we could only do 10. And then the funeral home was kind enough to say, okay, we'll have all 15 of your family in one room, but please do social distancing and don't leave, and you have 3 hours. And then after that, that's all we could do with her. We couldn't go to the cemetery. We couldn't do other things. So with that, everybody says there's 3 things in life that will put you in a Looney Tune. I don't know how else to say it. One is a divorce or a death in the family and loss of a job, right? Well, for me, I lost Ted in 2015. I lost my dad last year, not even a year. I lost my mom, not even 6 months. I retired myself from being of service as a body work therapist and trauma work therapist for 35 years. And, the other one they're saying is selling a home. And I'm selling a home. They say, wait a year. My brother said, wait a year, Rowena. But every time I sat and asked deeply and meditated, the answer was, no, now's the time to do it. So I used COVID to declutter and give away. I gave away 3/4 of my closet, 2/3 of my stuff in my home. I'm still giving away stuff. And now I'm in an escrow and I'm moving to the Big Island, closer to you.
Yay. Yay. I'm clapping.
Yes. So I attended a Peruvian mysticism training with Elizabeth Jenkins in 2008, I think 2010. And when I landed on that land, which is in Naalehu, I just stood by the gate. I drove and instead of driving up right away to the house, I just was compelled. It's interesting how I follow my body so much. I just had this strong, strong feeling inside of stop and just feel. And the first thought in my mind was I could live here. It's interesting how I'll just give you some other examples right now and then help me come back to this place right here. In 2004, 2005, somewhere around there, I was leading a vision quest at the Springs. And I had a dream that Ted and I were living in that cottage. You remember that cottage? So Ted and I were living in that cottage. So when I came out of leading this vision quest, I said to Ted, by the way, I had this dream and I have this very, very strong feeling that we're going to live in that cottage. And he goes, yeah, right. And I go, no, I really feel it. I don't know what's going on. And, I'm getting dizzy. I need to just ground. I'm getting really, really dizzy. Oh, that's because Ted just came in. Woo.
Yeah, just breathe.
Mom and Dad are here.
I see them all. Absolutely. He's been coming in closer. Yeah.
The field just changed big time.
Yep. Yeah.
Whew. I'm just tingling all over.
Me too. I'm breathing with you. I can
This is
feel
really
it. I can
amazing.
see.
It's happening like while I'm being interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know. I have chicken skin all over.
I know. It's just,
I'll be
yeah.
curious to see what we see when we review this later.
Well, you see it. You see,
I see.
that's not my primary
That's
sense. Mine is
that's
more
mine.
feeling. Yeah, mine
Yeah, no,
comes
mine is,
tingling.
yeah,
Yeah,
mine's visual and kinesthetic, sometimes
right.
auditory, but visual is my primary. And
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen them. He's been back and he's been coming closer. Yeah, both the
yeah.
parents are there. Yeah, very much so.
So anyway, 6 months later, we're at the Springs, being a guest, taking in the baths, and I overhear one of the managers saying, "We really need to find somebody who's going to be a good operations manager." And I said to Ted, "Oh my God, I can't believe I heard this, at the front desk." And I said to Ted, "Honey, let's apply." He goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, so then when I researched it and called and said, "We'd like to send you our application." And she says, "Well, you're going to have to live here." And I says, "Where?" And they said, "This cottage." Okay, we'll live there. Oh my gosh. And so that was in 2006, moving into 2007. So that's, I'm just kind of giving you the thread, right, of these things that happen in my life. And then the other thread is when I moved here to Chico, it came through dreams, plus through a feeling of, I really want to work from home. It happened. I really want to be in a smaller community. It happened. My next relationship, forget it. I really want this blonde guy, blue eyes. It happens, right? So all these feelings and soul, heart feelings of naming it, and it just really lands, right? So, okay, so then back to being at this gate on Elizabeth and Naalehu, Elizabeth and Barney's land. I'm going, oh, I could live here. And throughout the 10 days I was there was this feeling of grounding and going, wow, wow, wow. So that's 2008, 2009, maybe 2010. I really can't remember exactly. Then my mom and I travel in 2020, before COVID. I think it was end of January. We were on the Big Island, and we visited Barney and Elizabeth because they have a fruit stand at the bottom of their property. And Mom was sitting at the table and kind of shaking. I feel really shaky. And Mom said, we could move to the islands because it feels like the Philippines and it's much cleaner. And if you want to move to the islands, I could live here, but it has to be in the city. And so I said to myself when she said that, well, there goes living on this land. No. And then she said, a few minutes later, we were both very, very quiet, just smelling the breeze and smelling the smells. And she says, you could live here. I see you living here. And I had goosebumps. So when Mom passed away, Elizabeth calls, I don't know if I called or she called, and I think she called and she was checking in. And she said, Rowena, Barney and I would like to invite you to live here for 6 months. And if it works out for us, and if it works out for you, we'd like to sell you a small parcel so you could build your own place. And our request is for you to build using bamboo because we'd like it to be, materials from the land. And that gave me, again, goosebumps, and I go, sure, I'm on it. So hence the closing, the selling of the house. And then, of course, as a person of, indigenous practice. And as a person of deep, deep connections to the earth and the ancestors and the elementals, selling a house isn't just selling a house, because the house has a spirit of its own. It's not just made of material, because the material has presence, even though it looks like wood or metal or marble, right? It from an essential perspective, it comes from one place. I don't know if people will understand that, but everything is essence. Everybody is essence, and even hair is essence. And so I remember my teacher saying, if you have a true relationship to essence, how you treat an apple, how you treat your car, and how you treat a person is exactly the same way, with reverence, with presence, because the apple, the person, the car are all presence. And so, taking that even further as an indigenous woman and practicing indigenous practices, it means making offerings to the spirit of this land, making offerings to the spirit of the house, making offerings to the spirit of the community, making offerings to the earth, making offerings to the ancestors, especially to Ted, because this was his home before me. And then making offerings to the spirit of the creek that is across my house, and to the mountain spirits. It's not that easy. So, and then something opens up. And until those practices don't get met, as a practicing diviner and indigenous person, these things don't happen. So meeting Ted wasn't by chance. To me, it was fated. Being here wasn't by chance. To me, it was something was already in place. And all I did was follow it through my bones, my stomach, and my heart. So is that enough of a story?
I think it's awesome, to say the least. So there's so much going through my head, but I'm like, what are your mantras for life? What are your
what are my what?
Your mantras, your guiding principles of life, if you had to. Oh my goodness.
I don't do a lot of mantras. First of all, because I am and probably will be a student of Diamond Heart. I don't know if you know that practice, but
I do.
I've been, so you're familiar with Diamond Heart?
I am. Mm-hmm.
So I've been a student of Diamond Heart since, I don't know, early 1990s, 1990, 1991. And I actually still see my Diamond Heart teacher through Zoom. And through the Diamond Heart, I have learned to not listen to this barrage. You know how, I know before Diamond Heart, my mind was always busy thinking, you know, like a wheel, right? Now, my practice, and to answer your question as a mantra, my mantra is sense, arms, and legs. And then see what arises. Sense, arms, and legs. So I'm always, sometimes I'm not sensing my arms and legs, and I have these little accidents like hitting my elbow or, you know, just hitting my bone somewhere and go, oh, get in your body, sense, arms, and legs. In terms of what would be the mantra of my life today, in terms of life, to me, it would be, how can I was such a good service to other people, and now how can I be of service to me? How can I be of service to this land that I'm going to go to? And how can I allow my nervous system to come more into a state of rest rather than this, for 35 years and in more critical, intense years of, the springs, 2007 to 2015. And then, I don't know how many years of tending my parents, but there was just these octopus kind of a attention, where, and I'm pulling all those octopus so that I can be more present for dreaming. I can be more present for more integration of me. And because my health isn't 100%, I'd say I would like to be more healthy. My spleen is always flatlining, and my acupuncture has an acugraph, so she sees exactly what's going on with each of the meridians. And my spleen is always like, 20, 25. And that's close to the flat line. And she says, Rowena, you're going to need a lot of rest, a lot of naps, and a lot of just you. So part of my agreement with Barney and Elizabeth is, yes, I'd like to participate with being of service to the land and to the farm, but I won't. But my main service is rest and recalibrating my nervous system so that I'm more strong and I'm more healthy. So then I can be ready for what is the next service that I'm going to do. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes total sense. And I can see that especially this place that you have selected that has called you and that you've answered, I believe it's going to help you do just that.
Yes.
You have been, just in the time that I know you, you have been there for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you a couple of times saying you need the time for yourself. And I know you've tried to build that in, even when you were caring with your mom and traveling with your mom and doing all of that, you would take time for yourself. But I never got the sense that it was the deep healing that you really needed for yourself.
You're totally right. I mean, I received body work once a week, acupuncture once a week, energy work once a week, cranio-sacral as much as I can, deep tissue every week, but definitely some form of body work. And then I had my Diamond Heart teacher, but that wasn't enough. I like lately, since I'm not doing a lot of work with the house now, I'm just waiting for this escrow closing. I'm napping. 2-hour naps almost every day. It's like, wow. And then 9:00, 9:30, I'm already ready for bed. I'm reading, of course, and I'm enjoying, but at least my body is resting, even though I'm not sleeping. And then 10:30, 11:00, I'm down and I don't wake up till 6. And then there's this feeling of, what am I going to do for Rowena?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. But it feels like you're resetting your clocks. You're resetting your system.
I am.
What a beautiful chapter to be in. And kudos to you, my love, for
Thank you.
For hearing this and knowing this and doing it. Because how many of us I know I should do this. I know I should do it. But do we do it? And you're doing it.
Yes.
You're doing it.
I want, one of my dreams in life is to grow old graciously, the way my mother grew old graciously. And my mother was of service to the nth degree. And there's one thing I don't want to follow, is I don't want to follow that kind of hardship that she did. And there's certain familial things that are ingrained in ourselves, right? That I'm saying no to. And part of it is that lack of self-care. And everybody says, oh man, well, one of the first things that caregivers do is that they're more sick than the people they're tending. And when I heard that, I go, that's it. Every week I gotta have a session with somebody. I gotta have my teacher. I gotta sustain this meditation practice and reading, and yet I couldn't really immerse because some of my consciousness was going towards this care that never really left me, even though I was laying down. And so, yeah, I love and I continue to be dedicated to practicing what I preach and practicing what I teach. It's which is partly loving the truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the last questions, which I think you've kind of answered, but not, and maybe you can't, is so what is next in store for Rowena?
Yeah.
What is the next chapter? What when we check back in just a few years, what will we hear? What will the updates be? I wonder.
Yeah, and my mind is blank on that. I just, right now, it's about ease, it's about health, and it's about coming more deeply in relationship to the earth. Because to me, COVID has a lot to do with the earth. A lot to do with the earth. I mean, staying home is about earth.
Yes. Yes.
Being
So
with
true.
family, yes. Forcing ourselves to be with family is about earth. Family systems that are forced to be in one household because of stage 1 COVID, right? It's like stay at home, right? It's about earth. And so that's what I want, to deepen this relationship to the earth, and then to really enjoy and breathe in the healing waters of the ocean and really come back to me. And then once that's clear, once I'm grounded in that, I'm trusting that the ancestors, the elemental spirits that follow me, the earth spirit, the water spirits, it's all going to be shown to me.
Yeah.
I'm trusting that. And I'm also trusting that I'm going to pose the question of what's next. And right now, I don't want to pose that question.
Right. It's not time. It's not time. You're
right.
No, you're still you're napping.
I am napping.
You're napping and prepping.
I am. I'm napping, I'm resetting, and I'm feeding myself.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
I love it. And I love that you're going to kind of sort of be neighbor to me.
Well, actually, yeah, I was thinking about that earlier this morning because you guys have better beaches than the Big Island.
We sure do.
And so I think, flying to you is only $29, right?
I know. And about 20 minutes in the air.
20 minutes in the air, right? And so I'd like to just bring my snorkel and snorkel for 2 days in a row and go back to the Big Island.
Anytime. You might have to fight a couple of our friends for your room, but that's okay.
That's okay. I have Virginia. Virginia has a huge 3-bedroom place.
That's right. You have Virginia. That's right. And I can't wait. I love going over to the Big Island and hiking. And
thank you.
For those of you that are listening in that may not know our Hawaiian islands, each one, they're all similar, but each one is so different. And the energy of each is very different. And I'm on Maui and you'll be on the Big Island, Hawaii. And it's a very different energy. I go over there at least usually once a year for a little bit of a retreat and a breath for myself, something different. Always to hike, get connected to Pele a little bit closer. She's my girl.
Well, I have a 2-bedroom place. You can come stay. You've got a bedroom.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'll take you up on that.
And I know you do body work, especially
I do.
Lomi. I'd love to trade cranio-sacral with you.
Absolutely. And I do
Lomi for me.
I do cranio-sacral as well, so even swap seeds with all kinds of fun stuff.
Lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That would
lovely.
be beautiful.
Lovely.
So I have to take you back to the first
Oh,
question.
back to where?
Back to the first question. So given all this luscious, beautiful, wonderful conversation, who is Rowena?
Really, I'm just a simple island girl who's looking forward to a lot of fruit, because I can't eat the fruit in the mainland. Can you believe that? It gives me a stomachache. So who am I? I'm really, when it comes right down to it, I'm just a simple person with champagne taste. Who loves nature and is very, very tuned in to the body, tuned in to the elementals, and constantly grateful, and regardless of how difficult life is. I'm always looking for, like when something is shitty, I'm going, okay, there's something grateful. There's something really heartfelt and gratitude here. How can I find it? Right? That's what I'm always going towards. And who am I? I'm ready. Whatever life's going to give me.
That's a good answer. I am ready. You are. You are.
I'm here.
You are. You are so here in so many ways. You are so present. And you are a gift. You are a gift. You are a beautiful gift.
Thank you. And I'm looking forward to, I don't know, someday something will happen and you and I will be in a field together, right? And helping women. I'm just really into helping women.
Yeah.
Helping children, helping women, helping those that need us, right?
Yes.
But not right now.
And not right now, but they are waiting.
Coming.
There are a lot. There are a lot of people, and yes. So thank you.
Thank
Mahalo.
you. Mahalo. Yeah, I had no idea where we were going to go, and it is what it is.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This series on being a service warrior is brought to you by Networks for Training and Development Incorporated via funding by the Philadelphia and Northumberland Counties Behavioral Health Intellectual Disability Services in Pennsylvania, and with the help of Joe Sterling of Joe Doggy Productions, Waikapu, Hawaii. Many thanks to all our guests and fellow firewalkers for sharing their wisdom, learnings, and joy with us.